Welcome to Fox Legacy, hosted by Tom Rothman.
This is the Newman Recording Stage, one of my very favorite places on the lot. Welcome to Fox Legacy. Glad you could be with us.
Hello? Anybody?
For film lovers of a certain age, meaning, I suppose, old farts like me, there was no more disheartening spectacle than seeing, late in his life, a corpulent, demoralized Orson Welles shilling for a winery, saying with immense gravity that they would serve no wine before its time. But whatever the sellout involved in that, it's absolutely a truism when applied to Mr. Welles's primary business, the making of motion pictures. While it's common sport to complain about so-called development hell, the truth is that for every movie that gets lost over years of development, and certainly there have been those, many great ones have been found with patience, long and careful and deliberate effort. Because greatness in film, like all art, is very, very hard to achieve. It may be frustrating, especially for folks like me, charged with producing a constant and consistent slate of movies every single year, but patience is indeed a virtue in movie making. The film you're about to see, Castaway, is an exemplary example of that very fact, and indeed of many other guiding principles of modern movie making. It's such a case study in excellence up and down the line that I ask all our new young production executives to study its structure and to understand its execution, because it has much to teach. I'll try to highlight just a few of those lessons for you here so you can keep an eye out for them as the movie unfolds. First, as I've said, great stories can take time to ripen. Castaway began as an idea in the ever-fertile brain of Tom Hanks way back in the early 1990s. This was at just the beginning of what would become Tom's brilliant producing career that, since has had success to match even his acting work with Band of Brothers, John Adams, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and many other producerial successes. In 1994, Tom discussed an idea he had for a modern Robinson Crusoe story with the screenwriter working with him on Apollo 13, the incomparable Bill Broyles. Together, they pitched it to Elizabeth Gabler, at the time production executive of 20th Century Fox, and for the last decade, the head of our Fox 2000 production unit. Beth decided to go for it, and together, they all three began to work on the script. From that moment to the release of the movie took 8 years, and eventually more than 30 drafts of a screenplay. But each and every one of those drafts was by Bill alone. And he and Tom never wavered. Now, for a time, Jonathan Demme considered directing, but eventually the project found its way into the unique and unparalleled hands of Robert Zemeckis, with whom Hanks had made a little film called Forrest Gump. And patience was rewarded with a film, although actually a huge risk at the time, that has gone on to become an undeniable classic. Risk? Wait a minute, you say, but it was a big hit. Well, hindsight is 20/20. Trust me, it was a big risk. Why? Well, first of all, the mechanics of the production itself were unprecedented. Tom had to lose not only vast amounts of weight, but he had to change his entire body type for the second half of the film. The only way the filmmakers could figure out to do this was to shoot the first half of the movie, then shut down for an entire year. Bob and his producer, the stalwart, unflappable Jack Rapke, went on to make a whole other film, What Lies Beneath, in the year in between, and then returned to do the second half of Castaway afterwards. Can you just kind of imagine some of the negotiations I had with the insurance companies on that? Well, what if the island washes away, they asked me. I said, if the island washes away, we'll find another island. And the film was not cheap, yet it's actually very radical. You had one of the biggest stars in the world, true, but we were going to give him a hideous beard and make him as bedraggled and unappealing looking as possible. And then we were going to stick him alone on an island for the bulk of the movie with no one to interact with except, of course, a volleyball. Not even any music. The only other film I've ever worked on that I can compare it to, before or since, is Ang Lee's adaptation of Jan Martel's best-selling book, The Life of Pi, which is currently in post-production for us and comes out at Thanksgiving. Pi, too, is a survival story, if a less literal one, I would say, than Castaway. And it, too, requires an actor to carry all the emotion of the story while playing off a non-human. In the case of Pi, a man-eating Bengal tiger. A boy, a tiger, and a small boat. A man, a volleyball, and a lonely island. Two great risks. Two brilliant, singular filmmakers. And me, I only hope for similar results. But as to Castaway, the risks were such that I can tell you the punditocracy, which lives to criticize studios, had a field day predicting our demise. But me, I always believed in it, for a very simple reason. I thought then, and I think now, that after 30 years, it was one of the one or two very best screenplays I have ever read in my entire life. But I'd be lying if I said we weren't nervous. Still, as my old high school coach used to say, no balls, no glory. And everyone involved with Castaway, Hanks, Zemeckis, Broyles, Rapke, Gabler, Fox, and our DreamWorks partners, had balls to spare. And the filmmakers had talent to burn. And thus audiences have, now and forever, one of the great modern adventures of spirit and soul and courage, Castaway.
Look what I have created! I have made fire! I have made fire!
Check it out, and I'll be back at a break to tell you a couple of cool things to keep an eye and an ear out for. See you later.
Fox Legacy, hosted by Tom Rothman, continues.
I give all young production executives, when they come to work at Fox, two things to read. One, Alexander McKendrick's book called On Filmmaking, and the other is Bill Broyles' script for Castaway. Both teach the art of dramatized action. Now, folks think screenplays consist of what the characters say. And of course, great dialogue is hugely important. But it's what the characters do and how that action dramatizes emotional choices that actually define a film's structure. And there is no finer example of pure, dramatized action than the film you're watching right now, because by definition of the circumstances the character finds himself in, there is no conventional dialogue possible. Everything must be shown, not told, which is rule one of filmmaking. And that takes great writing. I tried so hard to get Bill Broyles the Academy Award nomination his screenplay richly deserved, but failed because everybody said, oh, there's no dialogue in it. True, no dialogue, nothing but great writing, because great storytelling and great dramatization is great writing. And by the way, even the no dialogue charge isn't really right. You see, one of the many strokes of Bill's genius is that there actually is another character on that island, and you're about to meet him. His name is Wilson, and he's invested with great emotionality because of the way the living character interacts with him. It's a tour de force of acting, directing, and yes, writing. Bill got the idea when he spent a few days alone on a beach near the Sea of Cortez for research, and a ball washed up. One of the three original Wilsons sits now in my outer office, and every single person who walks in has the same reaction. Young or old, their eyes light up and they cry out, "Wilson!" and they smile. Watch the artistry and the dramatized action with which an inanimate object is made into an enduring emotional character. Oh, and by the way, let me here dispel a myth. Neither Wilson Sporting Goods, nor FedEx for that matter, paid one dime for so-called product placement in this film. We did try Spalding first, but they said no, to their eternal regret, no doubt. Hence, you are about to meet Wilson.
Fox Legacy, hosted by Tom Rothman, continues.
Perhaps you've noticed something rather unusual about the last hour and a half of the film you've been watching. There has been no music. Underscoring for films has been present in movies since birth, even before the sound was actually attached to the film itself, and even in the most realistic of dramas, it's an accepted audience convention. Here, continuing the theme of radical reinvention, which Bob Zemeckis brought to so much of Castaway, and to heighten the audience understanding of Chuck's absolute isolation, he elected to have no music at all, until the moment, which you're about to see, when Chuck finally escapes the island and his raft crests the last wave. But at that point, you will hear one of the most beautiful and emotional and effective cues that I believe has ever been written for film. Alan Silvestri's score was recorded to picture on a stage just like this one. This is called the Newman Stage. It's a state-of-the-art recording studio where full live orchestras can record score directly to the picture played on the screen above them. It's named for Alfred Newman, the legendary contract composer who composed over 100 scores for Fox, including All About Eve, How Green Was My Valley, and Love Is a Many Splendored Thing. Alfred Newman won 9 Oscars and revolutionized movie music in the process. He is also the patriarch of a great musical family that includes Thomas Newman and Randy Newman. Today, composers, like everyone we hire for almost every job on a film, are independent contractors like Alan, not employees as Alfred Newman was. But the music itself, if it's as brilliant and emotional and apt as Alan's, endures just the same. There are only 24 minutes of music in a movie 143 minutes long. But as with all things cinematic, it's not the amount, it's the impact that counts. Listen and enjoy.
Fox Legacy, hosted by Tom Rothman, continues.
Don't worry, I have no idea how to really use any of those controls. But luckily, the very talented music mixers who work here every day on the Newman Stage do. Well, you've seen Castaway, but now that it's over, I'm going to tell you an amazing story about its ending. There's an old saw that movies are made 3 times. They're made when they're written, they're made when they're shot, and they're made again when they're edited. And when this film was edited and shown to preview audiences, it was a puzzle. You see, they loved it. All the risk-taking had paid off. They bought in totally to the hardest parts of the film. Tom's appearance, Wilson, letting go of the oars. But at the very end, when the lights would come up, you could feel that something was missing. We previewed the movie many times in many different places. Bob Zemeckis, like many confident filmmakers, really values and believes in previews, and this was at a time before the internet made the preview process too public to be of much use. And after each screening, there was that odd old something's missing feeling. For the longest time, the filmmakers thought it had to do with the open-ended nature of the last scene. Tom on the literal and metaphorical crossroads of his new life. So they tried various alternatives to that scene. He followed the woman down the road. He went to her house. They even considered opening the lone box that in its unopened hope had sustained him all those years. But none of those felt right. Although, as an aside, I'll tell you, I know what's in that box. Despite all the rumors over the years, nope, it was not a fully charged satellite phone, nor a box of kitchen matches. It was from an earlier draft of the script and had to do with what the woman who drew the wings was sending her faraway lover. Write to me if you're interested and I'll tell you. Anyway, the filmmakers thought maybe it was just the ambiguity and unsettling nature of the ending, and they resolved for a time to leave it at that. But like all great filmmakers, Bob and Tom and Bill, they had an itch that just kept at them about it. So long after post was technically completed, they kept working. This is ironic given the film where Chuck is only rescued when he finally lets go of the oars. But in my experience, great artists are loath to do that. And eventually, these filmmakers had an insight. The problem, they realized, wasn't the last scene. It was a few scenes earlier. When Chuck had to say goodbye to Kelly, Tom Hanks' character had had no chance to show the audience his true feelings about that. Now this is another great lesson. Movie editing is very often about things that happen before the troubled area, not the troubled area itself. And so, less than a month before the movie's worldwide release, Bill Broyles wrote the scene where Tom goes to his friend's house and talks in front of the fire about hope, faith, Kelly, and the need to just keep breathing. And he cries. And when that scene was shot, long past the 11th hour with super secrecy here on this very lot over on stage 14, and dropped into the last reel of the film, the audience cried too. I know, because I was there. It was a catharsis for all Chuck had been through and for all the audience had been through. And the film's playability rocketed. In fact, I've rarely seen a playability change so profound. But the next time you see the film, look closely at that scene, as it was filmed almost a year after Tom had lost the weight and he'd gained just a little bit of it back. But it's shot so cleverly and the emotionality of Tom's acting so powerful that you see none of that. Instead, you feel everything.
You gotta keep breathing. Because tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide could bring?
With that scene in the movie, it opened at Christmas 2000 and went on to worldwide box office glory and lasting acclaim. What it didn't get, however, was Academy Award respect. Tom Hanks was nominated for his tour de force performance, but Bob, Bill, Alan, the movie, none of them were. Today, do we remember Chocolat? It's a good film for sure, but does it endure as Castaway does? Maybe we were too radical for the Academy at the time, I don't know. But in any case, that oversight leads me to the last of the many lessons I draw from the experience of making Castaway, one of my all-time favorite rides on the Celluloid Trail. A classic film is not born instantly, no matter how good it is. Like all art, its true reputation is made only over the test of time. If it endures in the culture and sustains in quality, then it may become a classic. Academy Award or not, you'll have to wrestle me awfully hard to convince me that Bob Zemeckis, Bill Broyles, and Tom Hanks' Castaway is anything less than an all-time classic.
Stand by, Wilson! Hold on! Hold on, Wilson! I think we did it! I think we did it!
See you next time.